The Streets, Traffic, and the Refuge Committee will be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the
I told
roll.
everyone we were out drinking.
Alderman Moore,
I'm here.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Here.
Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Boyd,
Here.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Martin,
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Present.
and Chairman Boyd.
Present.
6 present.
I just started looking through and you
Okay.
Previous row.
Do you have to go back to neighborhood development?
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's okay.
Okay.
We heard all the bills earlier.
Okay. Kennedy, I know he's here.
Yeah,
He was over there.
I
He's
wanna-
over there
he-
presenting a bill.
He was
Okay.
presenting.
All right, well. The first board bill we will hear is Board Bill 230, sponsored by Alderman Moore.
Oh, here he is.
Okay.
yeah, I ain't heard.
Well, I take that back. First board bill we're gonna do is Board Bill 155,
Okay.
sponsored by Alderman Kennedy.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have my own renditions here
Oh, this one.
from my many years of drawing streets. Can you pass that? One down. And that's, yeah. Board Bill 155 permanently closes.
Oh, it's two.
It's two, yes. That's both 155 and 156.
Oh, okay.
I only got 150.
You might have said that
Do
down.
you got 156, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't have
I can
155.
send another copy.
Okay.
There you go.
I need 156.
There's two of them.
That- okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
Board Bill 155 permanently closes a location at Newstead and Enright. It's really been, it was closed before I came into office, but it was supposed to have been temporary. And this simply makes it a permanent closure. We want to do a entrance feature at that location. And BPS says it's best that we have it as a permanent closure. And that's all this does. This is right there at Lane Tabernacle Church, which is at Enright and Newstead. It's slightly, it's not directly on the corner, it's several feet
Back, yeah.
from the corner.
Okay.
Okay.
That's simply all it does.
It sounds like a pretty simple bill. Let's see if we have any questions on it. Alderman Moore.
What are you gonna put there in place of those barrels?
We're going to do an entrance feature, very similar to the one that is at Enright and Taylor.
Yeah.
There's a theme we have on Enright with those entrance features, and that's, we put Adinkra symbols, those are West African symbols, on the pillars that are there. If you notice at Enright and Taylor on both sides, the pillars have what are called Adinkra symbols. Each one has a meaning. And the neighborhood has selected which ones they wish. So we're going to continue that theme down here. It's the only location in the city where those pillars in a street closure has Adinkra symbols. That is present. We're very proud to have that in the 18th. The only other place that has public Adinkra symbols is at the O'Fallon Y. And that's the surface of the floor has those Adinkra symbols in it.
All right.
So those are not just arbitrary marks on the floor, those are actual West African symbols.
Very good.
Any other questions, Alderman Moore?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Whoever comes behind you, are they gonna be able to keep this going? 'Cause
You
I
mean my wonderful drawings?
Yeah, your powerful, focus on ensuring that your communities don't forget the history, that's what I was looking at. So I think that's gonna be very unique, so I don't have any questions.
Alderwoman Martin.
I just have a question. Sorry, obviously. Why are they pushed back a little bit? Do you know the reasoning
Yeah,
why they do
because
that?
there's a door from Lane Tabernacle Church that faces in right there. The church is there right on the corner, so their main entrance is right on the corner, but they have one just east of that on in right.
Okay,
So it's to help them to get into that door without having to go all the way from the other end of the street.
makes sense. All right, thank you.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
I have no questions.
Okay. You already have the funds allocated for this?
We do.
Okay, so the next alderman coming on board, he can't decide or she can't decide?
It's allocated and the design is already done.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
You know, sometimes aldermen come behind other aldermen in the meetings
Flip
period.
it
And
on.
none of us would ever do
I'm
nothing
shocked.
like that, but
Of course not.
No,
then things don't happen that you
I get
hoped would happen. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 155.
I move we pass Board Bill 155 with the due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore,
Yes.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderman Kotor, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Martin,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
Okay, next board bill before us is Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 156 is for a permanent closure at Washington and Newstead. So that's 2 or 3 blocks just south of where Enright is.
Okay.
Actually, we have Enright, Delmar, then Washington, so a block over. That too has already been closed. Been closed for many years before I came into office. That was temporarily closed. And we're ready to do the entrance feature for that location, but we need to make it permanent. This one is directly at the corner, so this is Newstead and Washington on the west side of Newstead. So they're making it into the 4400 block of Washington. And they have already put together their design. We work with DPS, we just need to make this a permanent closure. And I ask for your favorable support. I hope my wonderful drawings here help
They're
out.
just perfect.
I spent hours in these things.
It looks like you put a lot of work in there.
Yeah, especially those little circles.
Right, you're
Oh,
right,
that's-
Sam.
Okay,
I work-
so let's go around and ask questions. Alderman Moore,
No.
Alderman
No.
Murphy, Alderman Boyd,
No.
Alderwoman Martin,
No.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 156.
I move that we pass Board Bill 156 with the due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 156 come out of committee with a due pass
There
recommendation.
you go.
I
Okay,
had
He's
one
got
on
another
board
one
bill,
in there.
but I'm asking that be held in the committee.
right, that's the Homer Phillips.
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't get all the signatures.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
we're
you.
not gonna do 216.
We're not doing
Okay.
Harmony.
Okay.
We have a lot of things from that hospital in our house, actually.
Really?
That's when Jake did the rehab there.
So let's go ahead and take Alderman Moore's bill. Would you like your bill heard, Alderman Moore?
Yes, sir.
Board
Okay.
Bill 230. We're on you.
Board Bill 230 is named after a lady. I didn't have to have signatures. I have one resident that live in that block. She's about 95 years old. She went in a nursing home. This is for Norma Jean Bell, Wesley Bell, Wesley Bell. The other Bell is the committee man's,
Anthony.
what's his name?
From the
Anthony
third ward.
Bell.
Anthony Bell's sister.
Okay.
She has a senior living daycare there in that block. And she passed away. I didn't even know she had passed. She was a very good friend and a great pillar of the community. She's a great lady. And I ask that you, for your favorable considerations, to name this street after a lady that I think that's worthy. You know, I will name my whole ward after somebody.
Right, right. Well, we're gonna help you not do that. Okay, let's go around to Alderwoman Murphy,
No question, sounds like a good idea.
Alderwoman
I
Boyd,
like it.
No questions.
Alderwoman Martin,
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 230.
How do I do it? I move that we pass Board Bill 230 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and
Previous
second.
roll.
Hearing no objection, previous roll, Board Bill 230 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Okay, next few board bills is Alderman Oldenburg and myself, so we'll go ahead and take up Board Bill 224, sponsored by me.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Robert take a seat in case we need his guidance for questions. Basically, Board Bill 224 is a dig once board bill. And the whole purpose of the bill is to give the utilities an opportunity to open up a grid in the city. There'll be a grid open up on the south side and the grid open up on the north side. And it would give the utilities an opportunity to collaborate. Let's dig once, Ameren run their lines, whatever they have to do, AT&T, whatever utility that need that particular opening, go in at that particular time. Now, certainly the onus is on utilities to participate and collaborate with each other, but what the city is saying is if you don't come in at that particular window, then you're gonna pay more as far as restoring the street. For example, you know, in our streets, we have someone come in and they'll do 4, we'll pave it, 2 years ago, and they'll come in and they'll do 6 cuts. And so now we have these patches in our street, and it's very frustrating. But if the utilities all know that there's this open window to come in and participate, then they can minimize their costs, truly. And it's gonna be up to them. Robert could probably explain it in way more detail. I'm making it very simple, because I think it's some simple legislation that we certainly need. It's been very frustrating dealing with Spire over the past couple of years, cutting holes in sidewalks, and then you have this little circle of a nice sidewalk that you just put down a year ago, and then you have an ugly patch job. Some of this came about because of those frustrations. I know Alderwoman Kara Spencer had issues in her ward with utilities. So this is a chance for all of us to communicate and talk to one another. The beauty of it is if everybody participate, Ameren, AT&T, whoever it is, can all put their 5-year plan or whatever it is on the table. And that also will help us decide, you know, where to open up grids to make it fair and equitable for everybody. But Robert, I'll let you expound a little bit more if there's anything I left out.
Okay. Well, this bill and another one that you're about to hear are designed to support the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program, wherein with this particular bill, exactly as Alderman Boyd said, the intent is to compel the Board of Public Service to create a, not gonna say a utility, a public works plan. Also provide, support a framework wherein all the utility companies can have some visibility into each other's capital improvement projects, look for synergies, and coordinate and collaborate. This bill does not apply under certain circumstances, for example, emergency repairs to failed infrastructure. So for instance, if there's a power outage or a gas leak, water main break, utility companies can come in and repair that. This will apply to new capital improvement projects. This does not apply to ward capital improvement projects such as paving, sidewalk replacement, because that's not really digging. And the way it works, and unfortunately I couldn't print this out, but the way it works is all the utility companies have already signed letters of support for the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program. The board has passed a resolution around their support for the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program. So the way it works is we'll be working with the utilities based on their priorities to break the city up into geographical grids. And then we will have 2 grids open at a time for construction, during which time utility companies can get in there, they can coordinate, they can collaborate. That does not mean that construction cannot occur outside the construction window for a grid. But if it does, then there will be much stricter restoration requirements, because another part of this bill is to start to protect both the city and community investments in infrastructure and neighborhood improvement. So for instance, if you want to dig up a sidewalk in an area that is not open for construction and a community organization has installed decorative features and decorative landscaping, you'll be required to replace that and restore that. Additionally, it gives all the utility companies and the board and aldermen and BPS insight into what's going to be going on where. So when the city's creating a paving plan, streets knows, well, you know, we want to stay out of this area. When aldermen are planning their capital improvement projects, it gives you visibility into, okay, maybe we want to put this one on hold until the construction window closes. To give you an example of the grid concept, I'm going to pass this around. These are not the final grids, but it just shows you a sample. In order to pull off the intent that's driving this legislation and the kind of coordination and collaboration that's going to need to occur, we need several things. We need rules, which is a big part of the reason that these bills are putting in front of you. They establish the rules. The rest of the rules will be established through BPS policy. We need tools, like the one that you're looking at when I pass that around, that provide applications for people to gain visibility into what each other's doing. We need a program and a structure and a framework around which to pull this off. That's what the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program provides. And then finally, we need the will. And, the citizens of St. Louis, the message has been received that something's got to give, right? The message has been received from the board that something needs to be done. Utility companies have started to demonstrate their will to make this happen through their letters of support. The board has demonstrated will to make this happen through your resolution. And the operating departments that would be affected by this have had input into these bills, and in so doing are expressing their will to make this happen. So, there's a lot of reasons this hasn't happened in the past. These bills are being put in front of you to help establish those rules and provide encouragement to start this kind of coordination and collaboration and put the city on a better path that improves the quality of life of the citizens of St. Louis, which is the overarching major tenet behind our Smart City initiative.
I think that was well said. Now, that being said,
Right.
let's go around and take questions and comments. Alderman Moore.
You calling these grids, what's the accessibility? Do we still have to dig up the street to access the utilities, or is this something with a metal cap on it in that grid that we can raise it up and work on it anytime we want? Or do we still have to dig the street up?
The streets are gonna get dug up, period. They're getting dug up now. Our infrastructure is old, it's failing. The streets are gonna get dug up. This provides a framework to help, to promote coordination and collaboration and start to put some structure around when, where, and how that happens.
Will we have a better way of accessing the utilities now that you've got these grids? Or we still gotta go through the same motion of and leaving holes in the street and come back 6 months later and put the blacktop down?
While
Looked like you would create something, I didn't get a chance to see the computer, but looked like you would create something, it was a grid going this way and that way. We would have easy access to the utilities that's running in and out of those grids, right? We still gotta dig up to get to them.
yeah, they'll still have to dig up to modernize, replace infrastructure and things like that. When the grid is open to construction, and, there will be patching and things like that as they're doing repairs, but then once the construction window closes and we start repaving, there's less of a chance that that's gonna get dug up again after we've repaved it until the construction window for that area opens again, which could be 3, 4, however many years later.
Were you putting conduit in?
Mm-hmm. This applies to, this pertains to every utility: power, sewer, water, gas, our own water department, our own streets department, telecommunications, fiber networks.
How would that help us to trace down the problem? Is it easier for us to trace it by putting this grid in? The problem. If we have a problem out there, utility, is it easier now for us to trace that utility down?
I would hope, and we're not putting, I would hope that I know the city plans to use this as an opportunity to update our maps of our infrastructure and things like that. I would hope, to the extent that any of the utility companies would be looking to update their maps and things like that, that they would use it as an opportunity to do so, to make it easier to locate where things are at, and failures and things like that.
Who's that you keep looking at over my shoulder?
Oh, there's Cameron representative behind you.
A friendly
What
person.
is your position
My position?
with the city?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Gaskell Clemens, Chief Technology Officer for the City of St. Louis.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Alderwoman Murphy,
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd,
No question.
Alderman Bosley, good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me, board. I was getting a bill heard over there in neighborhood development.
Excuse me,
I
Mr. Chairman.
apologize. Was here this morning.
Any questions?
I do. So it looks like, and I just want to be clear that this bill, it says here that this does not, right in section 1, line 5, the all capital improvement projects with the exception of war capital improvement projects. Line 3 says, to the extent permitted by law, this chapter shall apply to, and then, excuse me, all capital improvement projects with the exception of war capital improvement projects. So with the exception of war capital improvement projects, any capital improvement project that's outside of whatever it is that we say that we want to do within the ward, right? And it seems like this would be for anybody who's not, and
Yes, and this is a result of some of the questions that came around the EIG board resolution, so we wanted to make it clear that ward capital improvement projects such as the paving of streets, the replacement of sidewalks are not included in this bill. And another part of the reason for that is, ward capital improvement projects generally aren't digging. And also, a big part of this bill is to protect those investments. So under this bill and the structure that's being put in place, you would have visibility into whether or not this is a good time to pave the street. But if that area is not open to construction, you can still proceed with your capital improvement projects. This is meant to protect your projects and your investments, not prevent them.
right, which is what it, what it looks like it says here, if I wanted to clarify. But does that take our ability away if I wanted to hypothetically say outside of one of the timelines on one of these grids within my area, if I wanted to add a camera to the ward and I'm outside of this timeline and that we had to dig to put in fiber to do so, would that limit me, even though that is a capital improvement project, but it is not excavation of streets so we can pave a street? It's not just doing a sidewalk, it's actually digging.
Well,
would
if
we be
the
affected?
city needed to dig to install fiber to support a camera project outside of an open construction window, then the stricter restoration requirements would apply.
Understood.
So it wouldn't be we wouldn't be patching sidewalks, we'd be replacing sections of sidewalks. We wouldn't be patching streets, we'd be replacing sections of streets.
Right, so instead of me just saying I want to dig in this one block and put a camera up because I have, an issue going on and this is where we need a camera at right now, I paid $30,000 for the camera, then an extra $5,000 to $7,000 after I tore the street or sidewalk up to pave that entire sidewalk. Correct?
To pave the section that was damaged, yeah.
Well, not just the section, it says the entire thing would have to be done, and that's in the street and the sidewalk. Correct?
You would have to replace, instead of like putting a concrete patch in the sidewalk, you would have to replace the section of sidewalk that was damaged.
Right. Let me read that part again. Okay. So, in terms of, let's say, in replacing an entire sidewalk, are we saying if the sidewalk is broken up into, what is it, like 4 foot by 4 foot sections, you'd only have to replace that one concrete block? To
Yes.
make it
Yes.
look,
So instead of just coming around and filling in a hole, you would have to replace
That
that
entire
4
section
by,
strip.
yeah.
okay.
You wouldn't have to replace the entire sidewalk along the block. You would have to replace that tile, that concrete block that was damaged.
Now, would that decision be based at the sole discretion of BPS as far as what needs to be paved and what that section says? Because we don't have anything outlined, and you know, as far as what an actual section in itself measures out to be. So
BPS is part of, this provides the legislative rules. There will be policy rules as well, published ahead of time, that would lay out the restoration requirements if digging is done in a grid that's not currently open for construction. So BPS would not be on a case-by-case basis making up the rules as they go.
Right.
So the rules would be established ahead of time. So everybody would know, outside of a construction window, if I damage this, this is what I'm responsible for restoring.
But we know that through policy, and it wouldn't be through ordinance, which means they can change that policy at any given time, because this just gives you the ability to say, if I want to make it 2 blocks or 3 blocks or 4 by 4 squares or 6 by 6 squares, it's based on whatever BPS says at this point. And that takes away our ability, honestly, without it being outlined at this particular point, to be able to micromanage how much money that we're spending, because sometimes we say we want this sidewalk done and we think it's going to be $5,000 to $7,000 and it comes back being $25,000, right? And I'm sure we all have seen paperwork, and you gotta ask questions, why is this so expensive? And they have to explain to you why things cost the way that it costs. I don't have an issue with BPS, but I think there are issues throughout the city to where we overspend all the time. And I think one of the issues that you're trying to address, which I can appreciate, just not making sure we dig on top of other projects and keep turning the streets and sidewalks up. But I think there's also things that we may not see kind of way out there in the future that could affect us negatively at the same time. Like, once again, everybody in BPS is not going to always be there, neither are us. We always, sometimes, like I got park benches, and I've seen projects that take up the same amount of space, cost totally different costs. And talking to different auto people, I got basketball nets that supposedly cost $1,000. Haven't paid for them, that's just not going to happen. But the point is, I've talked to other auto people, and they got basketball nets for $100. The same type of nets that I'm getting, going on the same type of rim. Right, so the things that they approve sometimes isn't always balanced when it comes down to discussions that we have. And we're not always looking at each other's paperwork. So we really, it's leaving it wide open for BPS to decide. And what it does is it gives opportunity for monies to be moved around, from my perspective. Because if you're paying $25,000 for a sidewalk, but it only really costs $20,000 to get it done, all we see is the paperwork 6 months afterwards. I feel like we overpay on a regular basis to get things done. In a way, park benches should cost $6,000, right? But they do. To some degree, somebody getting paid for those things. But we need to make sure, especially moving in the future, we weren't here to approve board bills that outline park benches and things like that. But we are here at this, at this particular time to help create an outline for what our city will go by in the future when it comes down to building tech. So, for instance, I want to build a tech center right at the corner of Natural Bridge and Graham. I don't want to have to look within this grid and have to figure out when I can dig in the ground and put up cameras, when I can dig in the ground and do this or that, or anything around that particular sector, especially when it says that if I'm outside of this grid, BPS has that they have the sole right to say yes or no to my project, right? And that takes away, the Board of Public Service has the sole right to do so. And that's right outlined in between 7 and 13. I don't like that. And I think it takes away our ability to be innovative on the spot. You know, if we come into a developer or somebody who hasn't spoke to the rest of the city and said, hey, this geographically works for your ward, I got a new technology, I think it's amazing, but I don't want to talk to the rest of the world about it, let's make it a secret. We all got things we have going on within our wards right now that we haven't talked to each other about. You know, things we're trying to keep on the low so we can make sure that the project goes off the way that we want it to go, right? So I can just see this in the future being a hindrance because it makes you have to, at some point in time, outside of a particular grid, you have to force yourself to make sure you're doing particular things within a certain time frame. Because if you're not, then you have to answer to BPS, and it's up to them solely to say yes or no to your project. Right now, I'm having an issue with...
It's not, if I may, it's not an
Yes, sir.
issue of BPS saying yes or no to a project. I mean, we've specifically put in here that construction can occur outside of an open construction window, but to protect investments citywide, there will be stricter restoration requirements. But again, those will be established up front, and this bill also does not apply to new development. So if somebody wants to build a facility and that's going to require running fiber and power or gas, that does not, this legislation does not apply to that. So BPS doesn't have the ability to say no to a project. What they have the ability to do is establish rules up front that govern how construction when and where construction occurs, and restoration requirements if it occurs outside of those locations or outside of those timelines. So it doesn't apply to ward capital, it doesn't apply to ward capital projects such as streets, sidewalks, cameras. It doesn't apply to anything that aldermen submit that they want to use ward capital funds to pay for. This does not apply to. It doesn't apply to new development. So if somebody wants to build a building or install a facility in a location and that's going to require digging to get service to that building, this does not apply to that.
I don't think that's outlined very good. I'm sorry. Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't think it's outlined very well, especially when we're saying this chapter should not apply to, at the sole discretion of the Board of Public Service, excavation in the right-of-way required to support land development projects such as neighborhood improvement, commercial and/or residential construction. Like that's, we need to make sure we're putting exemptions in here for ourselves as all the people to make sure that we have sole discretion over what projects get done in our ward in any of these grids. I don't, like, no matter what happens, this is not for the people in City Hall per se. This is more so for those gas companies, so the electric companies that don't normally have conversation with each other. City Hall is one big house. We don't talk like we should either. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to. We're forcing them to with this ordinance, but we don't need to put ourselves a part of whatever it is we're asking what we're asking them to do, because we already work, I think, within City Hall and have the ability to do so. We just have not taken the initiative to do better in communicating with our departments. So I don't agree with limiting our ability to override the Board of Public Service during a time when we want a project done outside of this grid, or any project at any time, when we have the funds and we have the ability to get the project done. Like, I hear what you're saying, and I can appreciate what the intent is. I just don't think it backs us up in a way to where if I want this done and BPS is saying, wait, another 6 months because yada, yada, yada is coming. We got people dying every day in this city. We got people that wake up every day and want to become drug dealers, dope heads, crackheads, prostitutes. People are leaving this city like 40 going west. So it's up to us 5 months from now to give people some hope. It's up to us to make sure that 7 months from now, whatever it is that we're doing in our 28 wards, that we're working on retaining individuals and not giving people a sense of, as soon as I get some money, I got to get out of here. And you have to instill hope into individuals, and I think we have the ability to do so with our innovative ideas, but we cannot be limited to an entire other board when it comes to what we decide what we want to build and when we want to build. I think that's everybody else within the city who needs to answer to the city, not the city answering to itself and everybody else under one ordinance or one board bill. And once again, I get the intent, but I I think we need to have a little bit more protection within that this chapter shall not apply to. We need to be the Board of Aldermen. And any capital improvement projects that they would like to do within their geographical boundaries. There needs to be something there that gives us the same authority of the Board of Public Service, just like we have right above it, that this shall, it shall apply to all capital improvement projects with the exception of what capital improvement projects. That should be that same exception under shall not apply to. So there's not a conflict in what's being said. Like, once again, I get one, we're not speaking about in capital improvements all the time about digging deep in the ground and changing gas and water and all these other things. But we ain't and have not always been pushing technology as a city also. Like, we all know we super behind. So as time goes on and we get different people moving into the city, we get new companies like Microsoft, we get new individuals moving to the city, we'll have new people being approached, new people approaching all the people, telling them what it is that they want to do, talking about new technologies. And I don't want, once again, the limitation, and I don't want to have to talk to BPS at all. I want to tell them what we want done. This is what we like to see. Figure out how to do this. Opposed to, you can't do this within this timeline or this grid. You got to wait to make sure. I've been told too much that I got to wait.
Alderman Bosley, this bill does not restrict an alderman from doing anything in the ward. What this bill is trying to do is create a system where everybody can be on one accord as much as possible to leverage resources and dig one time instead of, every year somebody's coming in doing something. In no way does it prohibit or take away the power of an alderman to do a project, period. If there's a concern about BPS and how they administer the program, and you feel that any alderman feel like, they're being restricted from being able to do something in their ward, there's always a trump card called an ordinance. So if they don't want to change the policy to make it easier for people to operate in the city of St. Louis, especially an alderman, then you introduce a board bill that says, look, in the third ward, this is what I'm going to do, period, dot, and it gets done. That's the purpose of an ordinance. But we cannot over-legislate policy. Our job is to create a framework in which the administration can operate in the best interest of the whole city. That is our purpose.
And the other thing here is we're looking at, these ordinances and the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program, the catalyst was our Smart City Initiative. So we're looking at changing the environment within the city to make it more attractive for technology investments, including, building out more fiber and things like that. Without a framework for coordination and collaboration, the problem that we're facing right now is only going to get worse as new people enter the market. Because new fiber network builders are going to come in. They're going to want to need to dig. So we've already got an issue when it comes to coordination and collaboration. We're trying to get ourselves on a better path, just with what we've got right now and what we've got going on right now, but also provide that framework for future infrastructure growth and infrastructure modernization without exacerbating the problems we have right now with you dig, you patch, you pothole, you dig. And provide that kind of framework.
The streets, man. We're gonna always dig up and redo streets. In 10 years, we're gonna be redoing streets. This is pavement. It's always gonna have issues. There's gonna be accidents next year, next week. Things are gonna happen to where we're gonna always have to redo streets.
Things are always gonna happen. Things
that's-
are always gonna happen.
Right,
But
so-
there is a degree of pain that everybody is experiencing right now that we're bringing on ourselves.
Understood. So either way, I respect, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying. I still I don't think we're micromanaging policy. I think that we're not making sure that we're giving ourselves the ability to be innovative, and we're making sure that in the future, when innovation does come, we're being micromanaged by BPS, which already micromanages us. When we want to do projects, we got to take it to 3 other people, 4 other people, which is not an issue because everybody needs to see it. I don't have a problem with the way BPS does business. What I have an issue with in general, and I think every alderman can I'm not gonna say everyone, but I know there is a vast majority, there's a lot of us, or enough of us, especially those on the north side, who can say they've asked for things to be done and it takes 6 months for it to happen, or 5 months for it to happen. And I'm sure, years, there we go. So it's north, south, east, and west. So that's something, once again, why does it take years for things to get done, or 6 months, or 7 months, or 8
I
months?
think that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, to a degree, right? Because if we already have issues when we're asking for things straight up, imagine how long it'll take when you're being micromanaged on things because you're outside of your timeline or your grade.
But could I say something? I don't think, and if I'm off, tell me, what I read this to be is for utilities. It's not for us.
It don't say that though.
Yeah, but it's for, and maybe they needed stronger
That's all I'm
word
saying.
language just to say for the utility companies that are coming in. Because I don't know about other areas, but my frustration, and I hear Alderman Boyd's frustration, they are perfect example. Spire come in and dig up, and then they'll patch up. Then you look a week or so later, and then here comes the street department, they
Power,
digging
water,
up
sewer, gas, fiber
and digging a
optics.
bigger hole. And so I think that was the reason behind what this bill was, to say, okay, if you all are coming in, this is the time frame, and so you're not gonna keep digging up the streets. But from my understanding, from where we stand, if I have a project and they're gonna have to dig out of the timeline or not, I'm okay, cause as the auto person, as Jeffrey said, I do the ordinance and say, they'll be digging and this is what's gonna happen.
And we're not saying you're gonna have to default to an ordinance. The purpose of, the intent of the Board of Public Service is not to restrict aldermanic projects, which is why we specifically have that line in there as far, the exception as far as what it applies to. However, it does apply to utility companies, telecommunications companies, fiber network builders, whether they want to grow within the market or enter the market, because we've got to do something to promote that kind of coordination and collaboration. We've got to protect investments that we're making in infrastructure. But we also need to address the fact that St. Louis has a failing infrastructure. Our infrastructure is failing. We are spending a lot of money to keep our current infrastructure on life support. We need rules in place as far as upgrading, modernizing, and growing that infrastructure in a sane way that respects investments, promotes coordination and collaboration, and the wise expenditure of resources.
Can't we just take the same lines between 14 and 16 and stick them in, be it ordained by the city of St. Louis as follows? It'd be as simple as that.
Alderman Bosley.
And it'd be outlined. It'd be no more conversations or questions because it outlines exactly what we're trying to do.
Alderman Bosley, section 1 clearly says, the applicability, to the extent permitted by law, this chapter shall apply to the replacement of existing or the installation of new infrastructure. B, all capital improvement projects with the exception of ward capital improvements.
Read that.
So the exemption is right there.
I said that, and then as soon as you go down, it talks about the Board of Public Service being able to supersede whatever it is our water capital improvement projects are after you continue reading and you get outside your grid. That's all I'm saying. If we put the whereas in there, where it talks about the
It's
utilities,
all
telecoms.
capital improvement projects with the exception of word capital improvement. So they're talking about capital improvements regarding utilities, not ward capital improvement projects.
Right, I get that. Keep on reading.
Okay,
Is not applying to the Board of Public Service and the excavation right-of-way to support land development projects such as neighborhood improvement, commercial or residential construction. These are the lines I'm talking about. At some point in time.
well, that's what it's saying. It's not superseding emergency repairs.
No. But it's giving the ability to let you know what is an emergency and what ain't. They have the sole right. It says that, sole discretion.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they have the discretion now.
We do.
To a degree.
But
This
ward-
doesn't change
thi-
that
This is more,
ordinance.
this is more toward the utilities and not ward capital. The exemption is clear. I don't know how much more clear.
Can we get another copy?
Because in the definitions, critical infrastructure being power, water, sewer, gas, fiber optic,
But
public
is that
safety
sole
and
discretion,
transportation.
once again?
It's
There is
for
basically-
the
There is
capital
another issue
improvement, not word
that we're
capital.
trying to resolve, and that is a utility's ability to just start saying everything's an emergency.
Okay, well, I can see that. That would be another reason to have sole discretion in there. See what I'm saying? You can say anything is a critical emergency based on what your need is. Everything is an emergency when you need something done.
So the reason for that language around the discretion of the Board of Public Service is to prevent somebody from coming in and saying everything's an emergency. That's why we outlined the exemptions the way that we did. That's why we defined critical infrastructure the way we did. And that's why that's why it gives the Board of Public Service the discretion to say, okay. But again, it exempts ward capital improvement projects right off the bat. We have a problem with definitions and the way people are using them. A utilities capital improvement project, while they use the term, is not the same thing as a ward
Ward capital.
capital improvement project. But you've got two groups using the same term. Therefore, we exempted the one right off the bat. So anything else that's in that ordinance after that section doesn't apply to ward capital improvement projects because we exempted them in, what is it, the second, third sentence?
Alderman Bosley, any more questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Okay, Alderman Martin. I'm sorry. Yes, Alderman Martin.
No questions.
Alderman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Okay. Since this is my board bill, I move that Board Bill 224 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved to second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
Board Bill 224 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Next board bill before us, you can stay there, is Board Bill 225, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg.
Can we do 227 first, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman? That's okay?
You like?
Just because it,
The board bill before us now is Board Bill 227, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg. 227.
excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. 227, the reason I asked for its priority over 225 is because it is sort of inextricably linked to the previous
Oh, I'm sorry.
bill you just heard.
All right, just give me my paper back.
I can pause. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
You know what? We're gonna go back, because there was a public comment on Board Bill 224. I wanna apologize to
Absolutely.
Sheila Jones for that. She
Absolutely.
did sign up to speak.
Come on up.
And so we're gonna have you come and speak for public comment. Can you take a seat right there for me?
My comments were going to be that Ameren is in support of the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program. We did write a letter. We are also in support of collaborating with the other utilities, which we've done in the past. We have reached out, and the primary project that comes to mind was the work that we did, it's been 2 years ago now, along Grand at Highway 44, right there by Cardinal Glennon, the BP station. We reached out, we met with Deanna Venker, we had MoDOT, the city people, Spire, MSD, we had everybody, all the players in the room to discuss collaboration, because there is a benefit to the utilities to partner when we're doing our work. If we're all going into the same grids to do the work, it makes sense. However, the issues that we ran into were the budgets of the other utility companies. Everybody's budget period is different. If they don't have the money together to do the work at that time, they're not gonna do it, even though we're paying, we were paying the bulk of the money because we were rebuilding our manholes. that's gonna create some issues for the other utilities. And there may come a time when it will affect us as well. Those are the types of issues that I can see you running into. My question was to get the additional language behind the board bill and to ask about penalties and so forth with regard to not being able to meet those timeframes that you're putting in place for the utilities to go in. We all, like you mentioned, Robert, right now, the infrastructure is extremely old. We have some things underground that I've seen firsthand that have been in there since 1906. The stuff is old. We have to get in there and replace it, and that's what most of the projects that we're doing. I had sheet put into your mailboxes during the holidays because we're doing the Downtown East project. We have to go down there. Downtown is probably the worst area with regard to infrastructure, and you see how streets are falling in with cars on them. It's not because of the utilities. It's because of the water that's getting down there, washing away and eroding the ground down there. So there are other things to keep in mind, that take place. I think everyone is willing to collaborate because it saves us all money when we can partner financially to do the projects that we all need to do because everything's old. Gas pipes, we even have steam underground in the city. So those are the only comments that I wanted to make, is to keep in mind you're talking about people's budgets, finances.
If I may address that, that is a conversation that's already come up as the utilities have been participating in the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program. We know that there's the potential for that to be an issue. We can account for that. But here's the thing. If we've established these grids and we've established construction windows going out the next 10 years or so, utilities now, and the city runs into this same problem. Utilities and the city now have a chance to start tailoring or vectoring capital improvement projects to those windows, to start developing the budgets to be able to do. I mean, there's a framework for planning now that has that kind of coordination and collaboration built in. We are going to run into instances where a particular entity is not going to be able to go at the same time other entities will. But this at least provides a framework where we can try and do that planning. We can try and get those capital improvement budgets in place. It gives us a fighting chance. Whereas right now, if the water department was to sit down with MSD, budgets being what they are, there's a good chance that water wouldn't be able to partner with MSD because they don't have the money. But if they knew that that construction grid was going to open in 5 years, it gives them a chance to start budgeting. There's also opportunities for joint funding, for taking advantage of joint funding opportunities. Federal, the application for federal dollars, things like that. We've got a solid value proposition now that we can put in front of those kinds of applications. So yes, the issues that have been raised will be issues. This is just as much about providing some relief while improving the quality of life for the citizens of St. Louis and giving us a fighting chance to modernize our failing infrastructure. We still have wood pipes in place that date back to the 1800s in some places. It is failing. We've got to do something. We need to do it in a sane way. We need to provide a framework for that to happen. In order for that framework to be fully embraced, potentially, we need some rules and some authority behind it.
Right.
So I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to argue.
No, and I get that. One piece that I think that you're not thinking about, though, you're talking about the city of St. Louis. These utilities cover,
The region.
the region, period. So we can't focus on projects that are primarily in the city at one time, even if you're talking about a 5-year period.
Mhm.
Because there are other things that need to be done. The infrastructure throughout our territory
Exactly.
is failing.
And I'm hoping that the framework that we put in place with the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program is one that's repeatable. So if surrounding municipalities or things like that would like to implement something similar, this can become a framework with the potential of application regionally.
And I just want, you had mentioned, Sheila, about penalties. So there's no real penalty clause in it, with the exception of if a utility come in, and best example I can use is Spire. So we've paved this street and, 2 years ago, and they come in and now we have 8 patches in the street. Well, if it was a dig once, they come through and, they could collaborate and, if it's, inside the window, it wouldn't cost them as much, but once it gets outside that window, they gotta do that whole strip. So now, because we don't wanna be left with those 8 squares.
Right.
So now they have to come in and mill that whole side of the curve or wherever they dug, so that we have a clean street again. That's what would cost a little bit more. And again, we wouldn't stop any utility from, exercising a capital project. It's just depending on the framework of time, it may cost them more to replace the sidewalk or the street.
Which that's usually included in the budgeting, depending on what's happening, because
Right.
what we're finding right now is that there are a lot of obstructions underground. That stuff is so old. We're running into things that aren't even on the maps, and it's creating problems. So we're gonna have to take care of that. We've been pretty good about repaving and clearing up. I heard mention of areas where there's decorative things, First of all, there should be no planting or anything on the right-of-way, the easements for utilities, or people put them on there all the time to make things look nice. But we've been very good about going in, clearing everything, replacing even shrubbery, and making sure that we plant the correct types of trees and shrubbery so that it doesn't interfere with our service, our overhead lines and things.
I think Ameren is very conscious about community improvements and the aesthetics of a community and putting things back. Some utilities are not as kind.
Run into issues, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to.
And again, I apologize for
Not a
missing
problem.
you on it. Okay. So we'll go back to Board Bill 227 before us with Alderman Oldenburg.
Seats warm.
Thanks. Okay, just picking right back where we left off with Board Bill 227. This is an undergrounding bill. Currently, the precursor to this bill is obviously our Smart City Initiatives resolution that we passed, along with our EIG program, the Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program. And this effectively says that while we are coordinating among utilities and while we are trying to coordinate among city departments and their interaction with utilities and with the previous board bill and Dig Once, this allows an opportunity for us to save the utility and the infrastructure, make it last longer by allowing everything to go underground, just like we do already require in downtown. So in terms of utility, infrastructure, and capital improvements along wires, cables, telecommunication equipment, downtown has an existing ordinance, an underground district that says all those utilities have to be underground. It not only provides public safety, it also expands the life of the utilities, so it's safer. It adds to city resilience, and it also is aesthetically pleasing too. As you can probably attest in your neighborhoods, sometimes that infrastructure can look a little gaudy. I know we all need it, right? It's part of the modern home and the modern neighborhood. But to the extent that we are staying coordinated with our Dig Once policies and trying to get better in terms of our live reaction to this, and fitting under the Smart Cities Initiative banner, we thought it only appropriate to expand the current underground downtown district to the entire city as future capital improvement projects take shape. So with that, Robert's here. Between he and myself, we will try to answer any questions associated with this.
Okay, Alderman Murphy.
So you're saying that like from now on, anytime there's an improvement or something, it would have to be underground?
That is correct, yes. And it would be, the discretion would fall with the Board of Public Service to adopt a policy. And this would also dovetail into the, a city works, a utility and a capital works plan that BPS needs to write as well. So it would have to be where it makes sense, and there would be I think, interaction between what that policy states and the utility.
Exactly, and again, the intent is to work with the utilities. It may take 30 or 40
I was gonna
years
say,
Right.
it's a
for
big
all of our
expense if
infrastructure.
we ask
Yeah,
them to
it
go
may take
underground.
30 or
Yeah.
40 years for all of our infrastructure to go underground.
Right,
But when are we
Our
gonna
goal.
start
Okay.
that 30 or 40 years?
that's true.
Correct.
That starts.
Are we gonna cross the starting line now, or are we gonna wait another 10 years? And the whole thing about this is the resilience of our infrastructure. So we may very well allow a utility to continue to string stuff aerially as long as we know what their strategy is to get underground.
Eventually, okay.
And the other thing is, why continue to exacerbate the problem? I mean, okay, where are we really at if we say we've got more modern infrastructure, but it's still subject to a lot of the same vulnerabilities that we have now because it's above ground? So the last one was around growth and modernization. This one is around resilience and improving the quality of service that citizens get, and ultimately, at the end of the day, also having other side benefits like cleaning up the right-of-way.
That's all.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'm not trying to be combative, I'm just
No,
very
no,
passionate.
I guess my question is, what do the utilities feel about it? If we're giving them 30 years to work on it, that's different. Then every time somebody gets a new phone, everything has to go underground.
Yeah, the intent is not to pull the rug out from the utilities and say,
Okay,
okay, you're in
that's-
violation of our ordinance, start burying all your utilities day one. I mean,
The
there's gonna have
ordinance
to be a
sets
runway
the
to
expectation.
Correct.
Right.
As they're working out their capital improvement projects, based on what makes sense, like I said, we may go ahead and permit aerial infrastructure improvements, but what we need to know is what's your plan to get underground? What is your plan to achieve the resilience in the infrastructure? So if you're not willing to put forward a strategy or a plan, are we gonna continue to, let the issue be exacerbated?
Right.
Thank you. Hey,
Alderman Boyd,
No questions.
Alderman Bosley.
Yes, sir. Okay, once again with these limitations, man. I mean, not man, but Robert, not you, but the ordinance. Like, I mean, seriously. We always talk about how much money this city don't got, how hard it is to get things done, how hard it is to entice projects. I mean, literally, man, you're gonna force you saying that it's not forcing everybody to put things underground, but this is forcing you to do so by ordinance. This says that everything must go underground. Now, you can say, once
Everything's
again,
gonna have to go underground,
well, it
you're
don't
right.
have to, well, under this ordinance, it has to go underground as soon as we approve this by the Board of Aldermen. Now, you can say that that's not our intent, but there are plenty of things that happen within the government that are not intended. Everybody there's a reaction to every action, and the reaction to this action, you can easily argue that, hey, BPS or whoever it is in control of this isn't going to be going after people immediately, but I'm living in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. I'm on the north side where everything is falling apart, and we're looking for every incentive out here possible. The Central West End is built up, South Side is built up. All y'all can do is build up. You can't build out. Any infrastructure you gotta build, you gotta tear down on that side of town. You have to tear down to build up. That's not where we are. We can build out. All of the things that you all have set in place, that not even say you all, that have been set in place for years, we are getting to a point where we want to start limiting. Just when we're at the point where the north side of St. Louis is at the point where we can start actually really developing because there's nowhere else to go. Being realistic. Now, I don't know who's making these ordinances, no disrespect to you, Alderman Oldenburg, and I know you all are working together on this Smart City Initiative. Some of this stuff just does not, to me, make sure that there's a cushion in the future to make sure that things have the ability to rise on the north just like they've done on the Central West State and the South. right now, and this is unrelated, but we're talking about limiting tax abatement. We're doing all these limitations. Everything is coming to a limiting point where we have nothing but one side of town right now that has the infrastructure to really be built on. At the same time, we're talking about reducing the Board of Aldermen and then merging the city and the county. All these things not a coincidence. Now, you may not yourself have any type of comments about those particular things, but I know these things, when it comes down to limiting the amount of projects you can have done in your ward, when those projects can be done, the type of infrastructure you can actually put in, where the city's been wide open all these years and we don't have no money to begin with. Like I have over 200 blocks. You know, when I want to put in decorative streetlights and all those things, I can only do like 1 block a year. I don't have, you know, we got 300, I mean, literally, we only get about $300,000 a year to do upgrades, and as time comes on, hopefully we can entice people that have been no conversation with SLDC or these other departments who've had the ability to help build up the north side over time, come in and be interested in building projects and doing things in a manner, I think that hasn't been done in a while, because, you know, if things were balanced in this city, we see a balanced city, and we don't. The more limitations that we put right now on infrastructure, I think the more limitations you have on the ability for the north side of St. Louis to catch up. And I think that's what this does. We keep talking about capital improvements. This is not even excluding capital improvement projects from the Board of Aldermen like we excluded them in the last board bill. We don't, ain't nobody finna, how you gonna force these poor people to put stuff underground? We don't have no
It's the
development.
utilities.
Right, so with all due
It ain't
respect,
just- yes, sir.
Alderman, I would like to deal in specifics. So
All right.
you listed a lot of abstracts there, and I'm happy to discuss those with you, maybe outside the purview of this committee. But what I will say is that this is only in the city rights of way. This is only where the city
Which
is
is where we can
public
only put our
land,
money in.
which is where the city's land is vis-à-vis the utilities that use them. So
Right.
this is not to say that, someone doing a construction project, is limited in any capacity. They will tie into the public utilities, but the city seeks only to coordinate this with utilities, telecommunication companies, fiber network companies,
Video service providers.
video service
Cable
providers.
companies.
Completely understood.
So this actually, I would argue this is not a limitation, but this is rather an expansion that sets a course to preserve long-term infrastructure in all neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. And we know that a preservation of infrastructure is the silver bullet to economic development. So
Which I agree with,
nowadays,
it's
tech
always-
companies, they want the fastest, the strongest, and the most reliable, long-lasting infrastructure. This bill achieves that. This bill achieves economic development because we are protecting our infrastructure in our city rights of way. So,
I'm sorry, Alderman Oderberg, I do not disagree with you.
okay.
But in a time where our city is it's imbalanced. It really, really is. You can't compare the downtown St. Louis to any other, when you can drive 1 mile up the street and see buildings falling down. You can take one street from downtown and in 7 minutes, you'll be looking at buildings that are falling apart, that are just, been burned down for years. Now, you can easily say it's up to the other person, this person, or that person, however it goes, however you want to take it. The downtown St. Louis cannot be compared in any way to the north side of St. Louis at all. And that's what I can speak on because that's where I'm at. That's where I'm around. When I go to the Central West Stand and other places, I don't see some of the same issues that exist. There's more money there. There's more infrastructure. You have more businesses. You have people that have the ability to fit the bill when you're trying to bring things to an aesthetic, when you're trying to make things look aesthetically nice. When you're trying to make sure that, when you're trying to build balanced infrastructure where things need to be balanced from the jump. And that's just not the way it is. Like, everybody in the Central West Stand and on the south side has the ability to keep up with this stuff right now. They have a little bit more money, once again, to do these things. We done redone downtown how many times? Put millions of dollars into it. We've never put $2 or $3 million into a north side park like that. Or into, all of these things I think we have to look at when it comes down to trying to take a downtown plan and say, we're going to roll this out throughout the entire city. Just like that. There's no process where we're going to take 5 to 10 years and see how we're going to structure this thing. We're saying, let's make the ordinance, then let them make the policies, and we'll figure it out from there. And I totally disagree with that. when we are supposed to be the policymakers, when we are supposed to be the people that are setting the rules and making the ordinances. This is an ordinance, but we're letting them go out and create the policy based on this ordinance that's pretty much wide open. And once again, you can't take a plan that's meant for downtown and say, let's do this throughout the entire city of St. Louis without really looking at how it's going to fiscally impact, everybody's ability to be able to move their ward forward or to move the city forward in general. No matter if you're talking utilities, because I don't want to put cameras up right now. Like, I want 200 cameras in my ward. I don't want to use the $30,000 cameras or put fiber optics and all that extra stuff that needs to be done, but some of them will. I don't need to have the permission from BPS and all that extra stuff and the police to be able to do so. I don't want limitations based on those things, right? Like, and that's just being realistic. I don't want to, even though you have to put fiber optics underground, what I'm saying is, well, they don't necessarily have to be there. What I'm saying is, if we don't have the funds to keep up with downtown now, we definitely won't have the funds to do so when you're trying to limit us in keeping up with the infrastructure that's being built downtown. But we're not getting extra capital funds, or we're not getting people to come in and help balance those funds out. It'll just take projects longer to get done because we have to figure out how to come up with extra funds to make sure that we're in line with the city's infrastructure plan. And I don't think we're making sure that we're looking at the city equitably, because things aren't equitable right now. Yeah, we can say we want to equally distribute services, but that's not being done. We know where we want the city to equally look the same. We know we want everything to have some type of equal infrastructure, but the city has imbalanced. Things are not right. We got 20 years of disinvestment in one side of town. Right now, we got MSD putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into underground infrastructure, and we get rain gardens, and we're the closest to the river. I'm not saying, once again, that this has any correlation, but we're talking about underground infrastructure. We're talking about infrastructure in general, and this is what that taps. This is saying the entire city needs to be on board with this, and the entire city ain't even on board with itself. We all on working in line to make sure that everything is spread equitably across the city. We all on making sure that everything in the city is balancing itself out over the next 5 to 10 years. We don't have the ability to keep up with downtown. Once again, and I will state that again, nobody's pumping millions of dollars into the north side for infrastructure. You can tear down the park up the street 15 times and rebuild it and still have whatever it is that's underground there for water and a gang of other things. You tear down anything on the north side, you're gonna need to redo the pipes. I mean, flat out. You're probably gonna have to redo the electric, all of those things also. I don't think we need to add, once again, extra limitations and which make people spend more money on infrastructure, when you're trying to keep it in line with like downtown, like it's too much money down there.
Sure.
And that's all I'm saying. Like this needs to be for the Central West End next, or for somewhere else where you can create that type of infrastructure where they have the financial support to do so we can mimic that and see how that's going to be affected, opposed to just
So
saying,
this doesn't, just because you've referenced it, this doesn't cost the city any money.
It's gonna cost utility companies something.
Well, that's right, absolutely, but it's gonna cost them money anyway. They're gonna have to replace their infrastructure over the years to come. So, I mean, we're gonna have to do that anyway, or they will. And this basically says that this is a new provision in the rights of way of where we've seen successes in infrastructure, and we know infrastructure lasts longer if it's buried underground.
And what we want to do is achieve that balance in the long run. So infrastructure is just as resilient on the north side as it is in the Central West End or the south side.
But we don't have the money
Because
for
if we keep
infrastructure.
growing infrastructure above ground, yeah, you can do it faster,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, it's just as vulnerable as the current infrastructure is. It's just newer.
Alderman Bosley, I'm gonna give you a couple examples in my ward where it was the cost of doing development. So we did this project at Clarendon Wells. The lots ran 200+ feet back to the alley. And we didn't want those utility lines to run that far. So they buried them underground, from the back of the house all the way to the alley, almost 200 feet. It made practical sense because a 200 run of a utility line, I mean, anything, trees, is easy to break. So the developer put it in the cost of the project. The project worked, it was fine. We did another project at Arlington Grove where we took an alley that had utility poles in the alley because of course it was an alley. Then we created a street. I made the decision that the project would look a lot better, the infrastructure being underground will be will last longer. And I didn't want people to come out their house to see this utility pole. So we found extra money for that project. It cost $400,000. And we're talking about, that was a typical size, well, how many feet is that? 300, 400 feet run. But we found it. We found the money through development. Underground infrastructure is a lot better than the long term. Utilities company like Ameren, for example, when there's an ice storm, when there's bad weather, you know, not having those down power lines keeps power on. So it's really smart to do underground infrastructure. And it is a place we need to go long term. Now, is it gonna happen right away, as Robert said? Absolutely not. But we need to start planning for that. And it's just the cost of doing business. We can't say, well, we're looking for all this money and it's just gonna cost the project more to get improvements in my ward. It's time out for that. It's time to find the resources and do it right now so that it saves us in the long run.
Well, so you got people that are 90 years old and they'll be 100 next year. People that are 60 will be 70 in 10 years. They'll have 7 to 10 years to get all this infrastructure up and done. They want to see things
We're not
happen while
requiring,
they're
this
alive.
doesn't require them to do that.
But what it does is you had a choice. You had a choice to put those lines up. You had the ability to say, this is what I would like to do for the constituents in my ward because they complain. Right? Now, had they not complained, and if it is something that you could have done without having to put underground, however much though that extra thousands or $100,000 cost you, that could have been $100,000 on another project. And whenever you had the ability to come back, just like Telecom, Community.com, all these companies put up what they need to get started, and then they come back and they upgrade and they upgrade and they upgrade. That's what infrastructure is about. You put in whatever's going to make you enough to be able to upgrade. Everything is changing. This city is super old. We just set up here and said things are going. We don't even have solar throughout the north side. We're not talking windmills right now.
At what point do you start laying the framework for the infrastructure to upgrade this old archaic system that we have? At what point do we start? At what point do we start saying, everybody, you must do this?
I think when the city creates a plan that gives us more equitable structured city,
this is
period,
part
point
of
blank.
that.
Well, this isn't equitable. This is telling you that you must do this no matter what type of financial bracket you're in, no matter what part of the city that you're in. This is what this says. You absolutely have to bury this underground.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I think it's more inequitable for us to say there are parts of this city that haven't received economic development, and we're going to leave your infrastructure alone and bury the rest of the infrastructure in the city. Can you imagine the inequity that the arguments and opinions we'd receive if we said, we understand, Alderman, you want to continue to go, we don't want to put a limitation. Your infrastructure and utilities can stay above ground. The rest of the city is going to have longer lasting infrastructure and bury its infrastructure.
I have no problem with that.
I think, honestly, and I'm not, Alderman, I'm sensitive to the imbalance that exists in the city and to the point you were raising, but to me, this is part of the infrastructure equity. We're saying the entire city's infrastructure is better, longer lasting, more sustainable when it's buried. And we all thrive from that, from an economic development perspective. I think that's what I think at the heart. I'm trying to make sure you understand.
I do, and I can appreciate the intent, but, once again, there's always unintended reactions to actions and actions to actions, and I try to think 10 and 5 years ahead. You don't know what I have planned in my ward or what I have planned for the city or in general, but certain things that I see as a hindrance to great things that could possibly happen, I'm going to make sure that I'm outspoken on, based on the fact that we have untapped markets when it comes to a whole lot of tech right now and infrastructure in general. Things, I think, need to be left to the ability for us to do the same thing that's been done over the past 10 or 15 years. Everything is coming down to limitations. And by the time we look up, we're going to be at our limits because we're not going to be able to move the same way that every other part of the city has been able to move. Now, I understand our move to making sure that the city is working together and departments are communicating. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. We can put that in the ordinance in a second and making sure they communicate to some degree, no matter what it is, in writing, through email, electronically, whatever it is that we would like to say. But, once again, I think forcing companies at this point on the north side of St. Louis to do anything other than make sure that they're building right and making sure that, handling their little environmental issues, I think it's hurtful. We don't have a whole lot of development going on. And I think when time comes for it, and there is a big boom on the north side, which it will come, and there are a lot of different developments that are taking place, the more wide open these opportunities are for these companies to come in and actually have super innovative ideas without the restrictions of the city, the easier it is for us to make things happen. Just like you just said, yeah, it's easier to build on the ground. It really is. Now, if you said you're gonna have that up for 5 years and you're gonna make $500,000 or $2 million and you take it down and bury it underground, I'd be 100% okay with that, if that's what needed to happen in my ward for us to be able to start bringing some revenue or some funds into it. So once again, I can appreciate the intent, but I don't think we understand, once again, the possibilities. Just because they have not manifested themselves just yet for infrastructure growth on the north side don't mean that they won't. And I just feel like we're being counted out, not by you, but with all the limitations, the north side is being counted out right now. It's like this never gonna happen. We'll never see development, and we will. And we need to have the same abilities to rise as every other part of town. We need to have the least amount of restrictions and limitations, just like everybody else. We want to tax abate for 30 years like everybody else, or 25 years, it should be the same way. We want to get out here and build brand new ways to save energy, create solar farms, whatever it is that we want to do, there needs to be no restrictions on that. Absolutely zero, because this technology is untapped, I think, within the city, and we need the ability because we have the land. We got the land. I'm going to keep on saying it. We got the land. We can build anything, and we need to have as less restrictions on us as possible to be able to build anything.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions or comments, sir.
Alderwoman Martin,
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill, she didn't want to speak, 227.
I move we pass Board Bill 227 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and second, is that Pam Boyd, second?
We're
Okay.
gonna do these.
Okay. It's been moved and second. Any objection to previous roll?
We're all here. Yeah, I figured he would.
Okay. Now, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Can I say one more thing, please? Do I have the ability to?
You can vote.
God. Well, I just wish you people knew what you was doing. No.
Alderwoman Morton.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
5 aye votes and 1 no.
Board Bill 227 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Next board bill before us is Board Bill 225.
Excellent. Board Bill 225 is effectively just adding the small facilities micro wireless bill that we passed earlier to the building code. So in the event someone is coming to get a permit from the building department, it is that language and the ability that it conforms or comports with the state bill is now part of the building code. Additionally, we needed to make it part of the zoning code, and those ordinances are running through the HUD's committee on a separate legislative track. But under the bill that we all passed around the small wireless bills and the permitting process for such, all this does is administratively make sure it is part of the building code. So there's really no change much. Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, from materially from the small wireless cell bill that we passed about a month ago.
There is not. What's driving this particular bill is because of the way we're structured. We need to address small wireless facilities inside and outside of the right-of-way. So the zoning ordinances take a different track than the building code versus the right-of-way. So this is just the changes we need to make to the building code to correlate with the changes that we need to make to the zoning code and the ordinance we already passed that pertains to the right-of-way.
Okay, Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd.
This is just a follow-up from the previous, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman Bosley.
So what's been changed again? Just as an explanation?
Sure, so we passed the small wireless facility permitting process in the previous board bill, and that was for the right-of-way. This adds the same language around our permitting process, but makes it part of the building code, where administratively, folks need to come and get a permit if they want to build a small wireless facility in any part of the city. They have to come and make sure that the building code has these provisions. So it really is an administrative add to the building code, and we know we're gonna also need to add the same language to the zoning code. And they're all three then tied together.
So if I wanted to, or if I was hired by, let's say for instance, a new company that came in and they were paying homeowners to place their signal boosters on top of their house, and that'd be considered a small micro facility, you telling me that they can pay me, because it's my house. City don't own my house. I pay taxes for it. If I want to do whatever I want to do in my house, as long as I'm not changing the facade, I can do what I feel like doing, right? Without tearing down walls and changing the blueprint of it. So what it sounds like this is saying is, if I get paid by such and such company to boost their signal because their signal is low, I gotta come through the city to do so and pay the city a particular fee just so I can put and be in business with them. That's what that's not what this is saying? Because it's saying you have to
No.
file a permit to do so.
You
To
would
have a small
already, you would
facility.
already have to you would already have to apply for a building permit to deploy a small wireless facility as defined in HB 1991.
That's on public right of way. That's not on your house.
HB 1991 applies to not only the public right-of-way, but private property as well. So the legislation that we're required to pass under HB 1991 pertains to inside and outside of the right-of-way. So these changes to the building code and the zoning code are being made to keep the city in compliance with HB 1991 and FCC regulations. If you're building a small wireless facility on private property, you have to get a building permit. The city's not charging for anything other than that building permit, which is something we already charge for. If a small wireless facility wants to come, if a carrier wants to come put a small wireless facility in your backyard, you as the property owner are gonna have to come to terms with that carrier around what you're gonna charge them to do that. The city's not getting anything for that. The only thing the city's getting is the building permit fee, which you'd be paying regardless what you were trying to build.
Right, but I'd have to let the city know that I have one. And that's already in the ordinance that we just passed?
The ordinance that you just passed was
No.
only for the right-of-way.
Right.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So this is for the actual house then, is what I'm saying. If I want to put one of these on my crib, I gotta let you know about it.
If you're gonna put one of these in your house and it's gonna require construction,
What
you'd
if
have
it's
to
not?
let us,
Well, they would. I mean, all the
Well,
facilities
not
require
necessarily.
construction.
Well, no, because if they going from the ground up, it would require, all it has to do is be high enough. If it's high up enough, you can sit it on a roof with bricks and a pole. It's just giving off a signal. All you have to do is make sure that it's clear. Ain't no trees around it, there's no obstructions, but other than that, the signal is, it's just like putting a satellite on your roof. You don't have to get permits to put a satellite on your roof.
Correct.
So-
I would say it's fundamentally different than a satellite because
Well, not
there's,
necessarily. That's a wireless satellite. It's well, not wireless, but it's a satellite. You know, that's shooting off into wherever it's supposed to be shooting off. You can say space or wherever it's going, but point that I'm making is you don't have to pull permits to do that. So this the reason I'm concerned, right? Once again, we are in. I mean, the tech is booming, and you don't understand sometimes where things can go. I believe that sometimes the government can be a little too into what's going on or too into what you are doing. I love people to have the ability to be able to build, put things on their house, whatever it is that you want to have as far as technology is concerned. with, you know, you should be able to have you'd be able to be anonymous with it. You shouldn't have to be able to I mean, I can see if you're trying to, once again, build a wireless facility and it's standalone. It's by itself. It has nothing to do with the actual general public. But with people, I don't know why we're trying to limit people from having the ability to put whatever it is they want to put on their houses without having the city meddling with it.
This is only right of way, correct? This
Nope.
is codified.
They just changed it. It was right away. Now they want to take your house. Like, not take your house, but put it, like, limit what you do to your house as far as communication
No.
services.
Actually, this is more limiting on the city than it would be on a property owner or the carriers. Because HB 1991 puts limits on what cities can do and regulate, both in the right-of-way and on private property. So this change to the building code codifies those limitations and keeps us in line with HB 1991.
If you're putting a small cell
The
facility
reason-
on private property, it requires a building permit, much
The
like.
reason we didn't do all of this in a single ordinance is because the way that we're structured, the building code, the zoning code, and what goes on in the right-of-way are in 3 separate areas. So we had to do the right-of-way ordinance, we have to do the zoning code, changes to the zoning code, and this is the change to the building
Can
code.
it just say new construction? Therefore, it outlines on private property, like a new construction is totally different, but if you already have an existing tower or a house that has, you know, it's 70 feet high, if somebody wanna come put some on your roof, once again, I don't think you need to have to go down to the city, or should have to be able to do that. We micromanage it.
Yeah, I mean, this is dictated by state law, so this is bringing us in compliance with state law.
How so? Where is that in, so in state law, it says that if I wanna go into, you know, if I wanna put a small wireless facility on my house, not new construction, it's just like, you know, state law doesn't make you have to get a permit to get charter.
Yeah, right, no, state
Right.
law, meaning that they passed a House Bill 1991, which governed how cities regulate small wireless facilities.
I hear that. I'm getting all that.
Right, so this is saying that if anyone wants to do one of those facilities on private property, a building permit is required. So I failed to grasp what your
And a small
issue
wireless
is with
facility
that.
as it's defined in HB 1991.
Right.
So 3 cubic feet for an antenna, 9 cubic feet for anything that would be attached on a pole, up to 23 cubic feet. So it's,
And this is not that much different from the OKS system that they have. There are some carriers that have towers inside people's buildings, but they're big, large commercial buildings, and they have to get a building permit to do that.
I get that.
You know, so.
Right, I get that. I'm just speaking in terms of at some point in time, like once again, we got places that people can't get 4G, just based on where they are, where they live at. Companies employ houses and people all the time to utilize their space contingent upon where their area is, for them to put something on their house to either boost wireless capabilities or to give out a particular signal, like boost this or boost that. Those things happen.
Give me an example.
For example, if you can't get 4G in a particular place and
No, I'm talking about right now, or you talking about in the future?
no, right now 4G is a real thing.
Okay.
It's like it's a
I
type
understand,
of
I understand what it is, but you're
a
saying that
wireless
people
connection.
are putting
Right.
these wireless devices on homes right now.
Right. Not necessarily a micro wireless facility, but something similar to it. Right. It could be something that just boosts your signal. Contingent. I don't know what it will be outlined in terms of with whatever company that they can come in connection with, but I know that on the north side things are pretty underdeveloped. So there's room for people to make money in the future based off us, you know, and this doesn't limit them to, not at all. I just don't like us having to meddle in places where we really don't need to.
and this pertains specifically to small wireless facilities. So signal boosters, things like that, don't fall under this. What falls under this is small wireless facilities as defined in HB 1991 and FCC regulations.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, these wireless facilities basically help us operate our cell phones.
And internet, and
So,
it's a whole
you know,
bunch
yeah,
of
people do
uses.
deploy signal boosters in their houses and things like that, but that's a different technology than a small wireless facility.
I'm sure there's people with micro wireless facilities on their property. I can guarantee that somewhere. It's just, you know,
And this is about restrictions being put on the city, so the city can't charge for the deployment of a small wireless facility on private property. We can't regulate the deployment of small wireless facilities inside commercial buildings and inside stadiums and things like that.
we said can't, right?
We can't, and that's what these
So why would we
changes
do
are
it
in
to
here to
homeowners?
reflect.
So these are facilities that if they're hung on a private building or private property, Brandon, I think, or Alderman, I think this is no different than the general welfare and safety concern, where if someone's strapping a 3 to 6 foot pole or small wireless facility on their roof, I think it's the city's obligation to make sure that it's attached correctly, appropriately, so it doesn't fall on somebody when they're cutting the grass or walking underneath it. It's no different than you adding a porch or a mudroom. These are well sort of established items of construction that require a building permit.
And there's also electrical concerns, so we need to make sure that they comply with the electric portions of the building code. I mean, these are not something that you plug into a 110 outlet.
Yeah, but
Somewhere
what
in
company
your
gonna put that up and not make sure it's done right? Tell me, come on,
You'd be
realistic.
surprised.
You heard about it in our city. I don't hear about nobody's small wireless facility hitting people in the head. We have millionaires all over the place.
Well, none of these have been really deployed yet or constructed yet. This is all new technology that's coming.
Not really, it's new to us. All right, I have no more questions.
Alderman Martin.
Thank you. Sorry, just to go back, I can't remember, I know we discussed this, but, how are we assessing the permit fee? How does that get assessed?
It's the same building permit fee.
I forget, how do they do that? How does that?
It's based on the cost.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, all right. Thank you. That's.
But those fees are, the one
They're
caveat
capped.
I'll put on that
Right.
is those fees are capped.
By the-
Right,
as it
which
comes
was the
to
point
some-
of
yeah.
the legislation in
got
the
it.
state, right? Okay, all right,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Alderman Middlebrook.
No question.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 225.
Move we pass Board Bill 225 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Moving to second, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
No.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
5 aye votes and 1 no vote.
Board Bill 225 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. The meeting ended up going longer than I anticipated. We have one more board bill, but I have to take a quick break. So the Streets Traffic and Refuse Committee is in recess. The Streets Traffic and Refuse Committee is reconvening. Before us now is Board Bill 184, sponsored by Alderman John Collins Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Board Bill 184 is real simple. It is authorizing the honorary street renaming of a portion of North Newstead Avenue to Representative Joshua Peters Way. Representative Peters, who was recently retired from the Missouri General Assembly, served as a state rep for the last 6 years. He is a resident of the 21st Ward, and he has been the youngest African-American state rep ever to be elected. I think that this is, more than appropriate, especially being that he is a resident of my ward. And the portion of Newstead that we are renaming, also on that strip sits the Senator Jet Banks Museum, who was also a resident of the 21st Ward at that time, or at least what was known as the 21st Ward. So I'm asking the committee's approval and passage of this board bill so it can be sent to the full Board of Aldermen That's all that I have to say. Representative Peters was an active legislator. Because of him, North St. Louis was able to get money for economic development. He brought resources and money back home to the 76th district. So again, I'm asking the committee's passage of Board Bill 184.
Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I guess my thing is, Alderman Muhammad, you didn't bring up where he had been in a real severe car accident, so that made him not be visible in the Jefferson City for about 6 months. But I do know that he was taking care of business at that time, because he brought some dollars over into the 27. So that to be said, as young as he was up against a lot of obstacles that senior state reps didn't have to deal with. So he came in the door fighting. So that's the only comment that I had, you know. I figure everybody has their faults and everybody has their good points. But when you're compassionate about your community, I think that overrides everything else.
You're absolutely right. Before he retired, before he left the General Assembly, he was physically absent for a few months because of his car accident, but he was still very active as a legislator. Josh has helped me do numerous things in my ward. Most recently, the redevelopment of Natural Bridge, making it more safer, along with Alderman Boyd, or Chairman Boyd, Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Moore, and Alderwoman Hubbard. We launched along with Representative Peters and the Missouri Department of Highway Patrol and the Missouri Department of Transportation, we launched the Natural Bridge Road Safety Initiative. And because of that initiative, we were able to keep Natural Bridge free of any deadly fatality for the last 11 months. Unfortunately, that ended last week where we had a car crash that ended in 2 deaths on Natural Bridge. But before then, we were able to keep Natural Bridge clear of any fatality. And that was because of the road safety audit that was initially started by Representative Peters, who brought us all on afterwards. And that was in the last months before he left the house, during the time that he was physically incapable of performing the duties, but he was still more than active than any other state rep that I can imagine. Thank you, Alderman.
Alderman Bosley.
No questions.
Alderwoman Martin.
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
How many people live on this street?
6, sir. I have that petition, if you would like to see it. Again, it's Situate only made 1 copy, so I apologize for that. I'm sure more copies can be made. But North Newstead is situated, of course, right off of Carter Avenue. The street turns and transitions into Pope Avenue. It's located right in the Penrose neighborhood, right in front of the Prince Hall State Office building.
You know, honorary street name is certainly an honor for somebody, you know, to have a street with their name on it who've gone above and beyond, you know, expectations. I'm thinking of different elected officials that may have had an honorary street naming, and Peggy Ryan, maybe she was an alder person who passed on, Norma Leggett, who passed on. I don't know of any living elected official that's had an honorary street naming named after them. I personally think that we as elected officials, we have a job to do. And nothing in my mind is meritorious, you know, because You know, you got development done, you got this, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. We're obligated to support our community in any way that we can. Being the first of something is always noteworthy historically, but I'm challenged to want to do honorary street namings for elected officials or past elected officials. I'm very challenged by that for somebody that's just doing their job. Now, I personally have a good relationship with Josh Peters. I have no problems with him whatsoever. But he did a good job as a state representative. And he should have. That was the expectation. You know, as a constituent, here's my expectation that he would go to Jeff City and he would fight for us. As we as aldermen should fight down here at City Hall for our constituents in our neighborhood. But that doesn't mean that I deserve an honorary street naming because I did some good things as an alderman. I did what the people sent me there to do. I am very challenged with this bill because I don't believe in it.
If I may.
I just don't think it's right. But that's Jeffrey Boyd's opinion. It's not like Josh Peters passed on, God forbid. I could certainly see that. But I don't want to start a precedence where we just start doing honorary street namings for elected officials because we like them.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think I have introduced the most board bills in the past 2 sessions for honorary street renamings. Me and you have had that conversation outside of City Hall. And I explained to you my reasoning in doing such. At this point, the most creative thing that I can do to spur engagement and to keep people excited about North St. Louis, or specifically the 21st Ward, is make them inclusive of everything that I do. I am in the process of rebranding the 21st Ward. If that means renaming a street after a pastor who has done excellent work in the community, or if that means renaming a street after Congressman Lacy Clay because of his long tenure of service, or Representative Peters, I'm doing this because my community needs it. And if we do not recognize the accomplishments of our own community or ourselves, then who else will? And I can say this, Representative Peters did not ask for this. He even asked me, well, no, John, don't do it. And I said, I'm going to do it anyway. My community stands behind it. The Penrose Neighborhood Group and the O'Fallon Community Organization, both. This particular corridor sits on the border of both neighborhoods. And I agree, I don't think that we should be in the business of awarding something as significant as a street naming to just everybody and anybody. But I think that, again, in North St. Louis and your ward and my ward and in the other 7 wards in North St. Louis, I think that we have a different expectation, and we have to do things differently as it relates to including people in everything that we do. And if it has to be a street renaming, why not? If it has to be a community event, why not? This is nothing more than a smile and a gesture saying thank you for your service. And that's something that we don't do. And in a black community, we don't. We do not say thank you to our elected officials who give up their time, who give up money, and who give up their livelihoods to be elected officials. And I'm not dismissing our colleagues in South City or our white colleagues, but there is a distinct difference being a black elected official and being a white one. And as a young black elected official, I know how hard it is. And I want my community to say thank you, Representative. And I would hope that the committee votes with me.
We can honor elected officials with resolutions. they're official acts, they're in the journal. The mayor can do proclamations, you know, for good notable acts. But it is an honor, it is truly an honor to have a honorary street naming. And as chairman of this committee, I want to make sure we're giving them to people who have done phenomenal work. You know, they're members of congregations that want their pastor to have honorary street naming all the time. 5th year anniversary, like to have a street named my pastor, been a great person, give away clothes, food pantry, 5 years anniversary. You know, I don't want to diminish the value of an honorary street naming. And I think that we should really examine what is truly worthy of such an honor. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna hold this bill to next week. And, cause I don't wanna make this sound personal. It's not personal. I want to elevate our conscience to the fact that honorary street names are very significant. They're very significant. And just because somebody was an elected official does not mean that, you know, that we should do honorary street names. I mean, we could just keep this thing going on and on with honorary street names of past elected officials. And I want to set that precedence. So I'm going to hold Board Bill 184, and we'll bring it back up for a vote next Tuesday. So with that, the Streets, Traffic, and Refuge Committee is adjourned.